Welcome back to the Mojo Podcast with me, Richard Stokes. It's great to have you here. And I hope you're feeling well. I hope you're feeling really good. I have to say, last week I was not. I caught a nasty old school flu virus and it totally knocked me out. And the impact on my physical energy completely depleted my mental and emotional energy, leaving me at a very low mojo state indeed. And what I realised, as always with these things, you just can't rush getting better. You've got to take it slowly, as frustrating as it was. Hence, this episode is coming to you a little late, but hopefully you'll agree it's very much worth waiting for. So this is the 7th episode in this series, focusing on founders, and we've had some wonderful, illuminating and revealing conversations so far. I've decided to create a wrap-up episode to this series once all the interviews are done. There'll be about 10 in total. And the reason for that wrap-up is that there's just so much wisdom and experience shared by this group of founders that I wanted to bring it together for you in one place that's easy to access so you can dip back into it when you need it. So look out for that. And the best way to be notified about new episodes, such as that wrap-up episode, is to subscribe to the Mojo Podcast wherever you find your podcasts. So one of the themes that keeps shining through, something that truly helps these founders create their businesses, launch their ideas into the world and then keep going, is passion. True burning passion for what they're doing. Now this might sound really obvious that it requires passion to kind of go your own way and take a step out. But what I've heard from this group is that each of them has seen the true passion in creating their own venture and seen what this delivers for them. And they understand that this passion will be tested at various points in their journey when things don't go to plan, and they often don't. And that's when your depth of passion for what you're doing picks you up and keeps you going. So passion is an absolute key source of mojo. And today's guest speaks exactly to this theme. Josh Scacheri is the co-founder of Love Hero, a new sustainable fashion brand looking to make a significant change in the way we produce fashion brands to be less damaging to the planet and to people. His passion has seen him make huge changes in his life, from leaving a successful business that he built in his native Australia to starting all over again at the bottom rung of the fashion industry in London. Why? Because he knew he had to do this to truly follow his passion. It's a raw and honest conversation, and it really is an underdog story. And who doesn't like an underdog story? We also talk about Josh's time on the reality TV show Making the Cut with Heidi Klum, and how this opportunity came to him when he was at his lowest ebb, having been made redundant the very same day. This was at the start of the pandemic. It's a great chat, and I hope you get loads from it. So let's go and meet Josh from Love Hero. Welcome back to the Mojo Podcast, and I'm delighted to have my guest joining me from London today, Josh Scacheri, who is the co-founder of Love Hero, sustainable fashion brand. Josh is going to tell us all about his journey to that. Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Richard. Thank you. How about you?
I'm well, thank you. Yeah, I've had a good day so far, and I'm always intrigued about this. 1 to 10, how's your mojo today?
My mojo probably about an 8. Yeah, 8, 9.
Okay, 8 rising 9. Okay, what's sitting behind that? Is that your usual setting, or is today a good day?
Today, a bit of progress, a couple of good meetings, but it's usually my setting. I think mojo is the main driver of my career. So you got to have a good mojo on all the time. And when you don't, it's about trying to pick yourself up and just get on with it and keep going, because that's life, isn't it? You can't just sit around and sulk. So it's embedded in my DNA just to enjoy life and enjoy what you do and just keep pushing through.
All right. Well, tell us a bit more about that, because this definition of what mojo means for you, it's obviously, as you said, it's important to you, but if it's embedded in your DNA, what does it mean to you?
I guess it's survival, and it's about kind of like representing, who you are as a person to obviously, families, to my daughter, in a business sense. I think I've always come from an underdog background. Before fashion, I was a footballer, growing up in Australia, and then I moved to Italy when I was 16. And I was a good player, but I didn't have the technical skills or the training that, most players in Europe get from the age of 3 or 4, So my only like forte was my passion and my mojo to really make it, So I had to really, pull those strings and, rely on that. So that's kind of like embedded into my sort of culture of mindset of working. And I think that's also reflects my business now and the fashion career that I've taken on board. Is, you've got to be passionate about what you're doing and, thick skin, because, we live in a competitive market. There's so many people doing the same thing, and I've seen too many times where, when I was at college studying fashion, everyone's, wants to do fashion, but then all of a sudden you realize that none of the class actually finalized their fashion careers because it was just too hard, didn't have the passion, the drive to do it.
Right. Wow. So yeah, I'm loving that. The at the core of it, as you say, your DNA is passion for what you're doing. If, as you say, football as a younger man, that developing into fashion, but the commonality of knowing to keep going in both hugely competitive worlds, I would suggest passion is at the core of it. And what do you notice? Can you see when you're obviously talking about yourself, you have the passion when you work with lots of people, I imagine, and we're going to talk about how your career has spanned from, your own label to working with some of the world's biggest fashion labels to back to Love Hero. But can you see it in people when maybe the passion, the mojo for it isn't quite there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I've been managing design teams, you can see, you can feel the air that, there's something going on that maybe one or two, team members don't have that drive because something's happened to them, or, they haven't had the recognition. So it really affects, the dynamic of the people you work around also, but I think it's trying to address that, and noticing those lulls of passion or mojo, and then quickly identifying what's the reason and then trying to change that mindset, I think is super key. And I think that's what makes a good leader too, team leader is, having a bit more of an emotional sort of, I don't know, an emotional mindset of awareness with people you work with, because we're all different, mate. And, I can understand some people got different reasons why their mojo or their passion drops. We're all human, and, it drops for me too at moments. You question yourself, am I doing this right? What am I doing this for? And then it's just a reassurance thing. I flick back on my existing work when I get in that lull and look at my work and go, well, you know what? This is what I've achieved over the past 5 years, 10 years. And, I just look at it and I just stare at my work and just analyze and go, well, actually, you know what? I am on the right path. I'm doing good. I just got to keep going. And, sometimes we get caught up in the fashion world. We get caught up in, people's opinion and, trying to fit in, and you can get really caught up in that, especially in the creative industries. And I think sometimes you just got to really just, go, fuck it. I'm doing what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it.
So much in there to unpack, but that bit that you end with in terms of keeping your own mojo up when in a, as you said, a very challenging industry. I was just thinking before about how, fashion, I suppose there are whims, there are taste changes all the time, and you might be part of that, but you're not in control of that. And if something moves away from, I don't know, 1 minute you're totally in vogue and then you're not, how do you cope with that?
Yeah, it comes with the territory, like even as a footballer, you're putting yourself out there and being judged all the time. And with fashion, it's subjective. People are going to like it, people aren't going to like it. And you just got to run with that and understand that it's not going to be for everyone. And, you kind of don't want it to be for everyone, but if you get caught up in the whole world, especially social media, of seeing what other people are doing and thinking that they're succeeding more than you, but you should be, it gets a bit, wishy-washy there. So sometimes you just got to put your blinkers on and just focus and just move ahead, And I think that's kind of when you get better results, because you're actually doing things out of passion and out of instinct rather than analyzing it too much. So yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, no, it sounds it. But then again, as you're saying, sort of the blinkers on, come back to what you know to be true, because the taste and will change with the wind, but if you keep that sort of certainty, and I love what you're saying about, the tangibility of what you do, go back to your collections. I mean, these are items of clothing you can look at and go, you know what, I am good. I have got value. We might be in a bit of a lull right now, but it will come back. And I think that's huge advice that people in any walk of life can take. Of go back to a previous guest of mine, Professor Damien Hughes, talks about how success leaves clues. And there's your success. And what was behind that? When we were doing that collection, what was going on that was really humming, that was really working? And anybody, I think, can take that advice. Yeah, I love that. So on the kind of taking sort of kind of a level of control, tell me a bit about, because I mentioned you'd worked, you had your own level successfully in Australia for many years, and then I believe you moved to Europe to work with some of the biggest fashion houses in the world before founding or co-founding Love Hero. Can you just walk me through a bit of that journey? What it went from own thing, someone else's thing, back to your own thing.
Yeah, well, so I left Australia 11 years ago, really understanding that if I wanted to, really succeed, I needed to be amongst Europe where, the big players are. Obviously, Australia is a great place, but it's a small market. So, I closed my stores, my studio, and when I moved to London, I was like, great, I'm going to go look for a job now, because I've never worked for someone else, straight out of college, straight into my own business. So I wanted to learn a lot more, make mistakes on other people's money, and really, really just get a foundation of the industry on an international level. But, when I arrived, I was knocking on all the doors and they were like, who have you worked for? And I hadn't worked for any brands. But I was like, yeah, but I've done this, I've had my own business. But really, they weren't that receptive, because I think here in London with the fashion world, it's all about who you've worked for. That then gives them a tick of approval to open the doors up. So that kind of put me back. I had to restart again. After 7 years in Australia that I built myself up, I came to London. I had to restart as a nobody, pretty much. So that was tough in itself, but it also drove me again to say, you know what, I'm an underdog again. I'm going to prove to you that I can do this. So my main ambition was actually to get into the luxury market. But before that, I wanted to really train in tailoring. So I started working tailoring with a tailor called Charlie Allen, who taught me a lot. And then from there, I migrated to your more commercial high street brands, eventually getting into the, to the premium brands, into the luxury houses. And, it was a great journey because it taught me a lot of things. It taught me a lot of things, what to do, but also what not to do. And then I think that kind of all fell into place when I did launch Love Hero last year, taking away my, things from my journey and inputting them into my business. And it gave me a clear picture. And I guess if you looked at it back from when my first brand was started, I was young, didn't know really much what I was doing, to now, I can see a clear more vision, a lot more confident in the decisions I'm making, and also in terms of business strategy and direction. So yeah, as you learn from your mistakes, you learn from your experiences, I think, and those little achievements I always take on board. Even if it's the smallest achievement, I'll keep that on my shoulder for the next time I hit a hurdle, and I use that as that boosting power to go, you know what, come on, you can do this, keep going forward, and I really teach that to my daughter too. Is like any little achievement you make in life, big, small, hold on to it like a little, like a little transparent sack on the back of your back. And you just put those achievements in that sack, and carry that with you on your life journey.
I love that. You could literally see it on your shoulder, that sack getting bigger and bigger with achievements. And what great advice to give. How old's your daughter?
She's 7.
She's 7. Yeah. And that, what an important age to understand about, I guess, self-belief and confidence and making your own way. And things. So great advice for her, and frankly for anybody to gather those achievements. And what I love about your story is this, you were a founder very, very early on in life. It's like after college. Then with that kind of, I actually need to learn more if I'm going to get to where I want to get to. So, what a big call to kind of do the whole the whole reset, and I would say shows a huge amount of humility to go, I don't know everything. I may be pretty successful in my market, but I need to know more, and to go through everything that you went through. But it sounds like that, although, as most career journeys aren't actually sort of linear, they're kind of squiggly, as some people have coined. But yours is particularly so, and really stood you in good stead for what was to come in terms of founding Love Hero. So what is particular? I want to get into some of the DNA of Love Hero, because as I introduced you, it's a sustainable fashion brand. Tell us a bit about what that means to you, because I think that's probably linked back to the passion, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously my passion is, clothing, but in, do it in a properly way. I was, 15 years back, I started to try to push sustainable fabrics, trying to set up, more conscious ways of creating fashion. And obviously it was way too early in its infancy stage when the whole world was talking about sustainability. So I always tried to push that with the brands I worked for. Some adapted it, some didn't, some took it on board, but it was only a box ticking exercise. So when I started Love Hero with our co-founders, we really wanted to make a difference in how we produce our fashion, but also the way the industry is working. So we're trying to really analyze the parts of the industry in terms of supply chain production, which don't really work now because it's having a lot of impact on our planet, and strategically trying to test new ways of how we can do this. And it's been successful. Not everything's working, but the things that are working, then we then evolve more. The things that aren't working, we're going, okay, maybe it's not the right time. But we're trying to put our fingers in many pies, because sustainability is multi-layered. There's not one fix. It's a journey. It's not a destination. And truly, we can't be 100% sustainable, because nothing's 100% sustainable, because we are producing products. But it's our duty to produce conscious products that then we are also responsible for once, the customer doesn't want them anymore. And that comes into the way we design something. So it could be then biodegrade into landfill if it was thrown away, or we can recall the products back to our studio where we can then upcycle them or recycle them for new products. So those foundations are already put in place, and we're working on that. And it's my passion to do things properly, and also have a bit more of a humble approach to fashion rather than this facade that we see quite often about the fashion industry being very closed, a bit stuck up, not inclusive. And it's changing, definitely. There's big movements, but for us, it's the norm for our business. Yeah, we'll market it, we'll write about it sometimes, but it's not our driving force of marketing, because it should be the foundations of every business.
Got it. And you talked about this sustainability, multifaceted, but that being a big passion and driver for you, and that you again, pre Love Hero, when you were in those big fashion houses, you pushed, almost pushed too early. Tell me a bit more about that and the reaction that you kind of got.
Yeah, I don't think it was too early. I just think once big businesses have been set up for so long in the same processes, it's very hard for them to then transition into a new way, because obviously, they are making money in a certain way, and to change that is a bit risky. If you want change, if you want better results, you need to be willing to change. So that was my drive, because I was briefed, let's make some changes. But, at the end of the day, you could really see the brands who really didn't want to make a change for better results. They just wanted better results. And, and that doesn't work like that, But it was hard. Yeah, it's hard to change that mindset of people, once they're stuck in their way, or once boardrooms, are sorted and they know what they want, and they return every year. So it is hard to change that. And I think that's where we're struggling with the industry at the moment in big businesses, is trying to look at that different systematic change, from a linear economy to a circular economy, for example. It's scary for them, but if you really analyze it, the circular economy will help the planet, but it'll also help businesses, grow.
And you talked about there's many elements to sustainability. Obviously, we talked about the planet side a bit, but there's also about the people side as well. Tell me a bit about that.
So sustainability is all about people and planet. I can't do what I do without my team, my suppliers, the people who make my fabrics, who cultivate the cotton. So it's very important when you are thinking about sustainability, you're thinking about that side of the aspect too, because, one can go buy a sustainable fabric, which is organic or, is made from, regenerated forests, wood pulp. But then if they then use that fabric and get a sweatshop to make it or don't pay their wages the right amount of a living wage, then they're counteracting the good they've done with the fabric. So people are very important, and without those people, without those artisans, you couldn't do what you do. So that's one key element of our business strategy too, is working with, factories and suppliers who have the certifications that, that their workers are getting paid correctly, so that it all kind of fits into our roadmap of sustainability.
And so tell me a bit about when, you were making the decision, or what helped you make the decision that now was the time to launch Love Hero. What had happened? Was it a moment in time? Was there a big build up?
I think it was a gradual build up, because I always knew that I wanted to go back into doing my own thing. And once I was in a position where I could, this kind of fast tracked it slightly, because during COVID, I lost my job as head of design for a heritage brand. And the day that I lost my job, I got a phone call from a production company over in the US, wanting me to be on a TV show called Making the Cut. Right. It's with Heidi Klum and Tim Gunn. It's a reality TV show with designers who compete against each other on every season, every episode, to win a challenge, and then you can win $1 million at the end if you take home the big prize. So I was like, whoa, on one side, my mojo was like 0 because I just lost my job. And then half an hour later, my mojo was like maybe 8, 9, with a bit of confusion of what's going on here. And it was a silver lining. So I was like, you know what? Why not? Let's just do it. My journey, my path has now split. I can either go left or right. And, I only had one option, and that was to go to the TV show and see where it took me. So we launched the brand basically on the TV show. The culture of the brand was already established, but, the aesthetic and the whole real essence of the DNA and in the direction wasn't. So that was kind of like a work in progress on the show. And after the show was filmed, I flew back to London from Malibu, and we had about 7 months to prepare the collection, really nut out our sustainable strategies, and shoot the collection, the campaign, get the website up. So before the show launched, which was last year in July, so we could capitalize on on the marketing and the growth that people see me on the show, and then coming to Love Hero's website.
Wow, what incredible timing to have on that day, that I'd say the horrendous news of you've been made redundant from a job that sounds like you were enjoying, and leaving it. So what now? And then this not everyday offer that sort of sprung up of, hey, come over to California and be on this reality TV show. What a day. So how, I haven't had many guests who have been on reality TV shows so far, so I'm really intrigued about what was that like.
It was mind-blowing, actually. It was such an excitement time. The production was massive. The crew were really cool. It wasn't like that typical reality TV show where they kind of pigeonhole you into a character and try to create conflict. It was more about us as designers and what we create in the workroom, and our personal journey, which was great because, a lot of these TV shows, do focus on sort of like these drama points. Yeah, of course, there was excitement in the show and there was a bit of drama, but it wasn't purely around that. So that's kind of why I kind of decided to go on the show, because I'd seen the first season. I was like, yep, okay, I get it. But yeah, the adrenaline rush was amazing. It felt like a fashion week every day. It was 16-hour days. We worked in the workroom with interviews and cameras, and you felt really special because you were the cast. And it was just one of those amazing experiences that you'll never forget.
And we were just chatting before about that the readjustment you had to make when you came back. What was that like? From reality TV to reality.
Yeah. It was hard because as a creative, I really strive on I guess, creative pressure, timelines, being under the pressure, I think sometimes allows you to think outside of the box really quickly. So when I came back, obviously realized it was a bit slower. It was, obviously great to see family and friends, but I had a bit of a lull period. I was like, I've got to keep that memento up, It only lasted a couple of weeks, but yeah, it's strange because sometimes, it's too much mojo, too much going on, and you need a pause button. But then when you pause, you're like, oh no, actually, I don't want to pause it. I want to keep going. And I think that is a combination of being passionate about trying to get to where you want to go, even though once you get there, I think sometimes you realize, no, actually, I want to keep going further. As human beings, I think we're kind of, created like that. And yeah, I don't know. It was a funny period because I just really needed to understand now, okay, yeah, I've had all this hype, I've launched a brand, now we got actually do it, So that was then another sort of, pressure point to actually perform it and actually execute it, which we did. And so, yeah, it's good.
Yeah. And so I'd love to come to the actually doing it bit. And you talk about we, and there are two other co-founders of Love Hero. Can you tell me about them and your relationships?
Yeah. So two other co-founders. The story was my friend Heather from Australia. We're all Australian. And my partner, Tanya, who's based here in London with me, obviously. We were acquaintances in Australia. Heather started Love Hero when she was at college and then moved to London and started working for other brands. So the brand didn't really, continue. My partner, Tanya, used to buy a few things off her. And when they reconnected here in London, she was like, come on, Heather, let's try and get Love Hero up and off the ground again. So they started the motions. We're trying to get a few samples done, but obviously, you need time, you need money. And then when you're working full time, you got kids, things get in the way. So that's when I was cast on the show. The show is more about designers who already have an established brand. And obviously I didn't have one. So I was like, let's just give this a kickstart and see if we can kickstart Love Hero on this platform. So I was the only designer on the show who didn't have a brand. And my whole story, based on what we've been talking about now, was the actual storyline of the show, is that I lost my job. And this is my new, my new journey. So, I mean, it was great for TV. It was great for me, but yeah. And that's kind of how it all fell into place, which is great because we're all friends and, we're passionate about sustainability and clothes, but doing things in the right way. So it's a good combo.
And that, that's, what everyone I've been talking to, there have been several co-founding teams on the show, and that importance of, as you say, the great relationship, the great trust in your co-founders is crucial. And obviously you're doing it. One of your co-founders is your partner. So that adds its own elements to the dynamic. What is that like?
It's hot and cold sometimes, you can get fiery, if your day-to-day life is, got a few things going on, you can sometimes bring that into work. But I think it's, majority of the time it's okay. I just think, as you said, that trust component needs to be always there. And I think sometimes you can just talk direct to the other person and not worry about if you're offending them or being too direct. Whereas in maybe a different scenario where you work for a company, sometimes you need to sort of tread around eggshells to put your point across, depending. But, we all have mutual respects. We all have different types of skill sets. And that's the important thing too, is utilizing each other's skill sets to get the job done. And it's a time management thing too, because, obviously Heather is based in New York. We're based in London. So it's that communication and communicating clearly, what needs to be done, what's on the agenda, so we can all, partake in the process. And there's moments there where I've taken on more roles because the girls are busy with other things, with their jobs or the children. And then there's times where they've picked up the slack and, and done things that I can't do because, I'm too busy doing other things. The mundane things, the ad hoc things that, it just takes up time. So it's a good balance at the moment.
Yeah. So that recognition of, it's sort of literally taking on the baton of right now, I'll lead on this because I've got a bit more bandwidth, a bit more time, as you say.
Yeah.
And understanding that will come back and support you when you need some time off or away. That will be there. And tell me about the skills. Yeah, the skills, the complementariness of the skills that you all have.
Well, I think so Tanya, she comes from a styling background, but during COVID, she upskilled and now is working for a charity helping homeless people find work. So
Wow.
her job is really about the community engagement of the business, reaching out to, communities or programs that we can help support, because obviously we would like to be involved with, helping our communities. So we work with Crisis UK sometimes, helping them get their e-com sites and social media strategies. So we divert our time to that too. Heather is more of our technical designer, so she'll help with the technical part of designing the products and women's wear and 3D printed jewelry. So yeah, we all have different skill sets, and I think even in a normal business where you're working in teams of other people, I think it's very important for co-founders or business people or bosses to really identify the skill sets of their employees, because you need to give them ownership of what they're doing. The more ownership you give them, the more they feel part of the journey, and the more you're going to get out of them. And I've found so many times working for other brands that culture in the office isn't there. It's just dog eat dog or do this, and you can see that, the staff members aren't passionate about what they're doing. They don't feel like they've been recognized, and it only takes small amounts of praise to really make someone feel important. Just a simple great work, thank you, keep it up, that encouragement, and that passion, then rubs off onto them, and then all of a sudden you see that your team is really like just behind you, because as a creative director, I couldn't do what I do without my team, so I need them to be pushing just as hard as me, and the way I do that is giving them ownership and allowing them to feel like their part is so important, because it is important.
Well, I was reflecting on just what you were saying about with your daughter. Your advice to her is putting things into that sack on your back of great work, keep it up, and those moments of appreciation that for anyone is super important. So I can see how that would play out. Also, if that's not being given, as you said, in some of the environments you've worked in, perhaps a little on the toxic side of it's so competitive that I don't feel I can give any appreciation to someone, which seems like a real shame.
Yeah, I don't know. It's strange. It's just the simple things in life I think we forget. It's like helping an old lady, across the street. She's really grateful, and you feel like, oh well, I've helped her. And it's just such a simple thing, and that can reflect in the office space too. Is like, just being there for a team member, or asking them, how they're feeling, or helping them make decisions and giving them that sort of drive to keep going. It's just simple, human skill sets, and I think we lack that in the office space in big companies and a lot of companies, because they're just chasing the buck. They're just chasing the dollar, and I think that's the problem too with the world we live in today. Is like, I think creativity needs to be at the forefront, and then commerce just behind it. If commerce is leading, I don't think businesses are going to survive in the next 10 years, because there's going to be a lot of change happening, and consumers are really looking into the authenticity of brands, and and their messaging, and the way they run their companies too, as buying decisions. It's not just about the aesthetic anymore. It's about the culture of the business and the brand and what they represent and how they're helping communities and other people. So it's a good shift. I think it's happening, but I just think we need to push even harder.
Yeah, I hear you on that completely, and you can see it playing out with brands who maybe one part of their story is very enticing, but when you scratch under the surface a bit, maybe the leader, the founder, is not behaving the way that they say they are, and you say it's all very transparent now. You can find that out very, very quickly.
There's so much product in the marketplace now, so, and they're pretty much doing the same thing. So as a customer, you want to buy into something that has meaning, has depth, not just, as you said, scratch the surface or things that are just there.
Yeah. And you talked about creativity leading commerce. I'd love to talk about creativity. Actually, you are a creative. We've talked a bit about this, and how passion is your mojo. But how do you keep yourself at that leading edge of creativity? What are the things that you need to do for yourself to be there?
I guess it's about being always aware and always wanting to explore further, rather than just seeing things from a surface. So like if you see something interesting on the streets, it could be a building, and looking at the angles and how they created it and trying to get into the mindset of the architect of why he created it that way, or then maybe, researching that architect and seeing what else he's done to understand his journey, things like that. I think, you really need to not scratch the surface, but really dig deep to find these narratives. Also, I think sometimes creativity just comes in flows and waves, sometimes, you will be in a lull. I've got to think of something and I've got writer's block, for example. But then all of a sudden, something so simple comes along and you go, wow, actually, that's it. I know what I'm going to do. I think a lot of creatives start off like that, is like they're excited at the beginning, then they realize, oh no, this is going to be hard. My stuff isn't working well. And then eventually they go, actually, I understand the journey. And then actually, I love what I'm doing. So we go through this whole process, and it's a little bit self-manipulative, but I think it allows us to really step it up. And just exploring nature. A lot of things that we do in Love Hero in terms of print is based around nature. So I'll be out in the forest, in Epping Forest or Richmond Park, taking photos of flowers and plants and textures to use for prints. And it just allows you to clear your mind away from the hustle and bustle of the city. And it gives you some content to be able to then start to create what you need to create. At the moment, I'm painting. I'm doing these paint swirls, and I'm actually doing it with my daughter, and we're having a bit of fun with it. And then we're scanning that in and creating prints out of that. So,
oh wow,
it's nice to do that too with your offspring, because they feel part of the journey too, and she loves it.
Yeah, so she can actually she was going to see her work in the brand.
Yeah,
when it comes out. I love that. And just that engagement and understanding what you're doing, and obviously with your partner as well. And you're sort of nudging into sort of my closing question. Really, it's about coming back to Mojo and what you need to do every day to keep your Mojo at that 8 or 9 that we started on. Hopefully it's still there. At the beginning of the conversation, are there some habits? I mean, you talked about nature there, you talked about painting. Are there any other things that you need to do to keep that level?
I think it's important to understand how you measure success. I think we've always been conditioned that success is measured by how much money you make, whereas for me, I measure success on the impact I'm having on the world, and the good I'm doing for fashion, obviously, and my customers. So I measure that as successful too. Of course, the commerce is important because it allows me to keep going, but my measuring stick isn't about commerce all the time, And I think that's where we need to look at in other business models too, is like measuring is successful doesn't always have to be about money, and your bottom line or how much profit you're making, because there's other elements that you can measure success on. How well you're treating people, how well you're giving back to community and helping underprivileged people grow in a certain sort of way. So they're the things that we like to measure ourselves, and that's how I kind of measure myself too. When my Mojo is a little bit up and down, it's like, okay, well, it's not about because this week we didn't make that many sales, but I've achieved this because I've given back to an organization, or I've helped someone be inspired, or given, I do a lot of talks at colleges on sustainability and how to start a fashion brand, and then seeing their feedback going, oh, this is amazing, thank you so much. I measure that as a success, and that gives me the Mojo then to say, you know what, I've helped someone. This is better than money, even though we need money.
Yeah, I love that, setting your own benchmark for success. I really understanding your impact. That is a brilliant takeaway, I think, for anybody to understand. When, as you said, it's a bit of there are a lot of up and downs in the industry that you're in any industry. So understanding when things are a little low, well, actually, where is the real impact?
Yeah.
And that again lift you up for those silver linings that are going to present themselves to you. Well, Josh, amazing to talk to you. Got so much out of that as we've delved into your Mojo and what's behind Love Hero and what brought it to being. So thank you so much for joining the Mojo podcast today.
Thanks for having me. And everyone check out Love Hero. And send us your feedback. It'd be great to follow us on our journey. And if we can help you with your Mojo by dressing you in vibrant colors, and that's another thing, the way you dress helps your mojo. So, yeah, we'll have to send you a t-shirt, mate.
Oh man, I'd love it, because the viewers might not see, but I'm loving what you're wearing more than what I'm wearing right now as we're on Zoom together. And all the links to Love Hero will be in the show notes. So please go and check out the new collections.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Josh.
Mate. Ciao.
It was really great talking to Josh, who was introduced to me by a previous guest, actually, Tim from Avalon, Calvados. I really love it when that happens. And I really love the humility Josh shows all the way through our conversation. He could have quite easily have opted to stay in Australia and keep going with his own successful brand, but he knew there was more for him. And to do that, he had to be humble enough to take some big steps and almost learn his craft again from scratch. And that takes real passion, and that really comes through, I think, in our conversation. I love what he and his founders are doing with Love Hero. They're not taking the easy route, but finding the right route to truly make an impact in an industry that's been a little slow to change. And they're doing it one garment at a time, one collection at a time, which is a really smart way of doing it. So do go and check out their clothes, their collections at lovehero.co. I have another brilliant episode for you in just under 2 weeks. That'll be a look at how to create a thriving business by truly understanding what a niche audience needs and then delivering to them consistently. If you like this episode, can I ask you to navigate the Apple Podcast review section and leave a short review? It makes a huge difference to the impact of the podcast, as more people will get a chance to find it. So until next time, I hope your mojo continues to flow.